In the NFL, it's funny. Sometimes the smallest, most insignificant looking moves end up making the biggest waves. Today, we're going to break down how one team's decision to cut a backup player is basically showing their entire hand for a huge Sunday matchup.
So here's the big question, right? How does a single roster move, we're talking about cutting a guy who isn't even a starter, send these massive shockwaves through an entire team? How does it affect star players, special teams, and maybe even the final score of a must-win game? Well, we're about to find out. We're going to follow the dominoes, one by one.
Okay, so our story kicks off with a transaction that, let's be honest, most fans would probably just scroll right past. A single line on the waiver wire. The Green Bay Packers made a cut. And this tiny move, well, it's about to set off a huge chain reaction.
And there it is, the first domino to fall. Backup tight end Ben Sims has been waived. On the surface, that sounds like, just another Tuesday in the NFL. But trust me, this is where our story really gets interesting.
So you might be asking, who exactly is Ben Sims? Well, he's one of those classic underdog stories. He was an undrafted guy who really fought his way onto the roster and became a pretty solid contributor. He's not a superstar, not a household name, and that's exactly what makes this whole thing so fascinating. Why would the Packers get rid of a reliable depth player like that? There has to be a bigger picture here.
So to really get the why behind this move, we've got to look at who's waiting in the wings. In the NFL, every single roster spot is like gold. And when a team makes a cut, it is almost always to clear a path for someone else. And in this case, that someone is a player the Packers have been waiting for a long, long time.
The math here is pretty simple, right? One player out, one player in. By waiving Ben Sims, the Packers have opened up one of those precious spots on their 53-man roster. And it's no secret who that spot is for. All signs are pointing to the return of their explosive wide receiver, Christian Watson. Man, when you look at Watson's journey, it really puts it all into perspective. After a brutal ACL tear just ended his season back in January, he has been on this grueling road to recovery. Now his 21-day practice window is officially open, which is the team's way of saying he's coming back soon. And with this roster move, soon could very well mean this Sunday. And just to give you a little context here, a 10-month recovery from an ACL tear, that's considered fast. For Watson to be this close to returning in under 10 months is just a huge testament to his work ethic and, of course, the team's medical staff. Getting him back would be a massive game changer for a Packers offense that has been desperate for a spark. But, just when you think you've got it all figured out, the plot thickens. Watson's return is obviously a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only piece. The fact that the Packers chose to cut a tight end and not someone else, well, that opens up a whole other can of worms, and it has everything to do with a totally different part of the team. All right, let's follow this rabbit hole a little deeper because it's going to take us somewhere you probably didn't expect, the kicking game. And this right here is where things get really, really strategic and kind of fascinating.
This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the Packers needed to clear a roster spot for Watson, why not just cut their backup kicker? I mean, it seems like the most obvious move in the world, but they didn't do it. They chose to part ways with a valuable depth guy at a totally different position. Why?
And this tells the whole story. The Packers' starting kicker, Brandon McManus, is dealing with a quad injury. He's officially listed as questionable for Sunday's game. That means they absolutely, positively have to keep their backup, Lucas Havrisek, on the roster just in case. It's an insurance policy. They just can't risk going into a game without a healthy kicker. So here's the bottom line. By keeping both kickers, the Packers have bought themselves some time. They have maximum flexibility. They can wait all the way up until just before kickoff on Sunday to decide who's going to be their guy. But that flexibility, it came at a cost, and that cost was Ben Sims' spot on the team. So why all this drama? Why are the Packers jumping through all these hoops, prioritizing a banged-up kicker over a healthy tight end, all to make room for a guy who's coming off a major injury himself? Well, the answer, in one word, is desperation. I mean, just look at the carnage in their wide receiver room. It's brutal. Two of their top playmakers, Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, are already ruled out. And with another key rookie, Matthew Golden, also questionable, the Packers are looking at playing a game with a seriously depleted group of receivers. And that's really what this all boils down to. For the Packers right now, getting Christian Watson back on the field isn't a bonus. It's not a nice to have. It's an absolute necessity. They need playmakers so badly that they're willing to roll the dice on a guy who isn't even 100% yet just to have a fighting chance on Sunday. That's how dire things are.
Okay, so we've untangled this whole complex web of roster moves. So what's next for the guys involved? Let's take a quick look at how this whole thing could shake out over the next few days.
Now, for Ben Sims, this isn't necessarily goodbye for good. First, he has to clear waivers, which means any of the other 31 teams can put in a claim for him. If nobody picks him up, then the Packers have the option to re-sign him to their practice squad. Think of the practice squad as a group of players who practice with the team and provide crucial depth. And hey, if that kicker situation sorts itself out, who knows? We might even see him back on the main 53-man roster as soon as next week.
So let's recap this whole thing. The decision to waive Ben Sims, that was the first domino. It set off this chain reaction that affected the whole roster. It's a move that's paving the way for a star player to come back. It's forcing the team into this high-stakes waiting game with their kicker. And ultimately, it's a desperate play to patch up a receiver group that's just been hammered by injuries. So we've broken down the strategy, the risks, the ripple effects of this one tiny little roster move. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. Was this a stroke of genius, or was it a desperate gamble that's going to come back to bite them? The answer? Well, we'll find that out on Sunday. And you can bet we'll be watching to see how it all plays out.